Hey, I'm Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Welcome to the Dom of X.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Dom of X. I'm the assistant editor of comicreleases.com and Near Mint Conditions' very own project manager. And today I have the pleasure of talking to one of my favorite writers in comics. You know him as the scriptwriter on Action Comics, The Incredible Hulk, Alien, Fellspyre Chronicles, and soon to be Batman and Robin. I am talking with, of course, the one and only Phillip Kennedy Johnson. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. And let's go ahead and kick the interview off with a little bit of an icebreaker. How did it all start for you? How did you get into comics?
As a reader or as a creator, like how do you
As
mean?
both. I think both would suffice.
Well, actually, I guess it's not that different of a story. Actually, I when I was a kid, my dad would bring on these like boxes of ripped up comics from like I never really went to a comic store like ever, in fact, until way later in life. Dad would just go to he frequented stuff like garage sales or flea markets and just look for you know cheap trash. He was always going like buying cheap stuff at things like that, and sometimes he would find like a little cardboard box or a milk crate or something full of old comics, and he would always buy those and bring them home to me. Um, and that's he used to say that he kind of boasted that he had taught himself to read off comic books when he was a kid, and he wanted me to do the same, and I basically did. I learned how to read from those old comic books. So that's when I really started to fall in love with them. I slowly amassed a little collection, and it kind of over time it became a more clearly delineated pile of DC stuff, Marvel stuff, and then more cartoony things like the forerunners to DuckTales, things like Golden Key and Gladstone comics, like Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Beagle Boys and that kind of stuff. So those were really fun, but I don't know. It wasn't enough to just read them. I would also try to make my own. We started out with just like copying what I saw there. I would draw. I would copy a lot of the drawings, not trace, but just try to learn to draw that way from those books, and make little cartoon strips that were like the ones I saw in the newspapers. And I don't know. I just dug it.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, thanks. I've always kind of been that way as far as wanting to imitate the things that I love. Like it wasn't enough to just read them. I wanted to make my own. Same thing with music and you know, honestly, a lot of stuff.
No, that's pretty
So
awesome.
yeah, thanks. And I mean, I ended up going into music as a career, and then came back to comics later. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wanted to be an artist, but I ended up pursuing music as a career. But then later in life, I had a younger brother who was also a musician and artist, and he kind of went the other way. He wanted to be a comic artist and didn't know how to get started. So I kind of got back into comics then. I mean, I still loved them in theory, but I hadn't been reading them in a long time. I'd kind of given them up in college, and I don't know. I missed them, man. I want to get back into it. So around that time when Bill wanted to make a go of it as a career, I dove back into comics to kind of see what the state of the art was like now, and found a great shop. Found this awesome store called Third Eye Comics that was just kind of starting up, and now they're this phenomenon. But at the time, they were really new, and yeah, started buying comics again, figure out how to write scripts just to give my brother something to draw. So
And
that's how I got back into it.
right now, it's like you're writing like some of the biggest titles, right? I mean, you were on one of the main Superman books for a good couple of years. Like you're getting to write Hulk now, and you're going to be doing a take on Batman and Robin, the greatest crime-fighting duo ever. And it's like, I think that's a pretty phenomenal thing that you sort of like, coming up from where you started, sort of like this like growing pile of comics, and now you're over here writing some of the biggest characters that we have in fiction.
Yeah, thanks, man. I've been really fortunate, and I don't take any of it for granted. And just trying to give my best swing.
No, absolutely. And in fact, you are, once again, you're going to be on Batman and Robin, which is coming up very, very soon on the screen If you are watching this on YouTube, I do have the release dates, the FOC dates, and which covers that you can buy and pre-order. I have so many questions that I want to ask you about Batman and Robin, because Damian Wayne is my personal favorite Robin.
That's great.
I grew to love him in the Grant Morrison and Peter J. Tomasi runs of their respective Batman runs. How did this come about? Like, how did you get the gig? You're taking it over for Joshua Williamson and Simone DeMeo. How did that all come about?
Well, I mean, this October there's this big kind of creative team shakeup going on in a lot of the books. Like that's the beginning of the All In initiative. That's kind of a new proper jumping on point for basically all the books that DC's putting out. So there's the absolute titles, of course, that's kind of like the reset in this whole other universe. But even on the books that are happening in the main DC continuity, they wanted everything to be like a clear jumping on point, So it's I'm off of Superman for the moment. I'm off of Green Lantern now. Like Green Lantern just wrapped up, Green Lantern War Journal that I've been doing. And the time is just, opportune timing. And Ben Meir is the guy who is the editor on Batman and Robin. Had read some of my earlier Batman stories. Like I've done some like Batman one-offs, and he's read them and really liked them, and he reached out. He knew that I was available for something like that, at least as far as my DC bandwidth, and reached out about doing it. I'm not gonna say no to that, man. Like
I definitely enjoyed your Batman during the Action Comics run that you did, and that for the sort of the prelude right before we get Superman off the Warworld. But no, just to like get this opportunity. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Just like you're gonna be writing Batman and Robin. Like, how cool is that?
Oh man, I know. And I mean, to get to write any Batman book is incredible, and the fact that I identify really strongly as a father. Like I've got a young son. And he and I are just best friends. And he's such a huge fan of comics, of DC Comics, but also Marvel and other stuff. When he was, now he's a Spider-Man guy now. He loves Miles Morales, but he also loves Superman like a good boy, and Batman as well. But when he was a little kid, like when he was just kind of developing some tastes, it was all Batman. He was just Batman was all his son just rose and set with Batman, and there was all these photos and videos of he and I playing Batman and Robin together. Usually I'm Robin in those games, and he's Batman. We had this really awesome Adam West cape and cowl that he would wear.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he wore that shit everywhere, like everywhere. He'd wear it to the playground, he'd wear it to dinner, he'd wear it, the library, wherever we would go, he would wear that thing around. I've got these awesome. There's like this little kid's like gym, kind of like a big play space thing where he used to do these, do some of these classes and eventually preschool. But during the playtime things when he was out in the open like arena type area, I've got these pictures of him like wearing a Batman t-shirt, like in some kind of a Batman pose, and some other kids watching him like, damn, you're intense. It's some really, really funny photos. But I don't know. I've got videos of he and I like workshopping possible Batman storylines that we might do someday. I don't know. It was just awesome.
Oh man, that's so wholesome. Because I think
to get to write Superman and his son was so great, because Superman was like the ideal father. But now getting to write Batman and Robin is such a great. I don't know. It's just such a cool experience in such a different way. Because Batman's not a great dad. Like he's been kind of recruiting soldiers, training soldiers. He's not really like a, he's not like a huggy dad exactly. He's not, it's just a totally different kind of approach. He's just super intense. He and Damian both are busted in such different ways. It's just a really interesting and fun dynamic to write. So God, I can't wait to show people what we're doing.
No, I can't wait either. And part of why I love the Batman and Damian Wayne as Robin dynamic is getting to see this was especially prevalent in the early the Morrison days, and of course we get to see it during the New 52 Tomasi run, even later on during Teen Titans Rebirth with Benjamin Percy and etc. You get the sense of like both of these guys are coming from sort of broken backgrounds, right? You have Bruce Wayne, where he gets broken because he saw his parents get shot in an alley, doesn't want the same thing to happen to others, but the way that he goes about business is not exactly the way that a lot of, I think, people would envision doing, right? I mean, he wears a bat suit to beat up criminals, which is typically not the first response when you get traumatized like that. And Damian sort of comes from this same background too, where both of these are very aggressive, headstrong characters. So how are you planning to balance out the dynamic between those two, and I guess the overall the difference in comparison between and the similarities too with their personalities?
Um, what can I say with that? Well, okay, there's one very clear way that I'm going to try to show all that, and that is that one of the time periods with Batman that I've been most fascinated with is his walkabout when he first left Gotham to gather the tools to become Batman. That's such a fertile time as far as storytelling possibilities. And over the years, we've seen little chunks of that, like where he went, what he was doing. But there's a chapter that I wanted to show. So we're going to see Bruce when he was practically Damian's age. And we're doing almost like a True Detective kind of approach where we show modern day and then back in the day, and we kind of show the two adventures kind of playing out. So we get to see Bruce and Damian at very similar ages, and how they're the same but how they're different. That's gonna be really fun. I'm introducing a new villain that plays a very important role to both of them. That I don't know. It's a really important bit of lore that we're adding to Gotham, but also to Batman's past, and it's going to have big repercussions for Robin as well. So I'm very excited for everyone to meet Memento, our new villain.
Speaking of new characters, like how did that process come about? Where you said we got to make a brand new villain for both Batman and Robin to face, and the trials that they're going to be facing. How did that process work out in your craft?
Well, I kind of had a Batman idea already in place in my mind before I even got the gig. This is a story that I wanted to tell before, and I just get the opportunity to do it. The fact that it's actually a Batman and Robin book was perfect because it didn't involve Damian very heavily. So I mean, some of the stories that I admire the most from yesteryear, like older stories that I kind of go back to, are Court of Owls and The Long Halloween. And both of those stories used new villains, but they also, and Hush did this too. Hush is not a story I turn back to as far as like the plot per se, but one thing that was really, really dope about it is how it managed to just bring in all the elements that make a Batman book feel like Batman. They brought in this whole cast, man. Like just so many of the Rogues Gallery showed up. Superman showed up. The Robin showed up. Like there's just so many of those beloved characters that showed up in that story. And I wanted this to be a real mystery. Like the story that we're telling in Batman and Robin, starting with 14, the Memento arc, is a proper mystery. It's like a murder mystery detective story. And I don't want people to know who's under that mask. I want it to be a legit mystery, but I also want a lot of the Rogues Gallery to be a part of that mystery. I want it to unfold across Gotham with all these characters that we know and love. So yeah, that was always the approach I was going to take.
I love that Batman idea, and especially I think the detective side of Batman sort of gets folded under the rug nowadays, where we get to see, right, because we like seeing Bruce as a superhero. We like seeing him as a part of a larger team, like with the Justice League, figuring out how to defeat these big villains. But I think one thing that gets pushed under the rug is Bruce is a smart guy and tries to figure out what and who happened and where and why. And I really, really appreciate that you're bringing the detective stuff back into the fold, because that's what I liked about Long Halloween. Even the beginning of Court of Owls, like you said, like it's him unfolding these clues before getting to that final spot where he figures it all out, and I'm very, very excited for that.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah, me too. The world's greatest detective element of Batman is, to me, the one that I always want to see more of, like always. So now I get to do it. So I'm really, really stoked.
Very, very as well. Do you plan to also bring some of, because Damian Wayne has a very, especially in the last 10, 15 years, his supporting cast of characters has grown bigger and bigger and bigger. Not only with the regular established folk that we see in the Bat family, like the Tim Drakes and the Dick Graysons and the Cassandra Cains of the world, but we also get to see like characters like Goliath and Maya and others. Are you planning to bring any of the Tomasi characters into your run, or the Gleason characters into your run? Or are you keeping this specifically with a lot of the pre-established Batman characters as well?
Well, it's important to me that this story be as accessible as possible. That like anyone who's come into the story because of my work on Hulk or on Superman or Alien or my creator-owned things, I want them to get it like from the jump. And I'm not going to say we're not going to see any of those characters, but if we do, they need to be introduced in a way that nobody's going to feel lost or left behind, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There are some deep dive characters that I would love to show, but it will have to be, if we do that, it'll have to be done very delicately in a way that that nobody feels left behind. I want this to be a book that is like evergreen. That I want every retailer to be able to give this arc to anybody. Like, oh, you want to read Batman Robin book? Here it is. Like, this is where you start. So I don't want to do any crazy deep dives with obscure characters yet. If we do, there's some characters I'd like to show, but they need to be handled very delicately. So that's basically what I'm saying is never say never, but not yet.
I will keep that in mind. I also have, I guess, another question to add on to that. Are you planning to use Damian Wayne's relatives at all in the book? Like, I'm talking about Talia, Roz, characters like that. Are you planning to incorporate the Al Ghuls into your story at all?
I mean, I feel like I have to. I'm a huge fan of Ra's al Ghul and of Talia too. It would be crazy not to use them. I'm trying to go at this book as if it's my only Batman book that I ever get to do. If the truck with my name on it out there finds me before I get to do another Batman series, I want it all to be out there. I want everything. I want all my Batman beats to show up in this series. In case this is the last Batman story I ever do. And I love Ra's al Ghul and Talia. The thing that's kind of staying my hand in this first couple issues is that we've seen a lot of that already. There's been a whole lot of Al Ghul love in the last few years.
Because we got Rob V on Detective Comics using Talia extensively.
She's popped
up in a lot of other books too.
Yeah, totally. And all that stuff matters. And I don't want to, in something that you're in any book at DC or Marvel, it's a shared universe. I mean, you got to be mindful of what toys are being played with, and what other stories, and not be redundant, but also not not accidentally conflict with other stuff. Like, you just have to be aware of what everyone else is doing all the time. So I would love to just have this be. I would love to have the Al Ghuls all over this book. But I will say there's gonna be some sightings for sure, because I mean this is a family book about father and son, and his mom is still out there. So to not include her at all would be nuts. I just have to be very mindful of it.
No, for sure, and I appreciate that answer. And in that case, like, we're probably gonna expect to see maybe a couple of Bat family members show up in here too, because is that a possibility as well?
But like, what do you mean? Like other Robins?
Nightwing.
Oh yeah. Freddy. No. We'll get that done. I mean, the book is Batman and Robin, and there have been other Robins, so we'll definitely get some other Robins in there at some point. I hope to be on this book a long time, man.
Me too.
I would love to be on this book a long, long time. So I'm kind of, whenever I do these books, I kind of play the long game, and I try to have like long arc. I mean, the Warworld Saga, the Superman's Warworld Saga went on a long time. So I have very clear ideas that I want to explore. Some of them will take a little time to get to, so I'm not rushing anything. But yeah, you'll see other bad characters for sure. Like, it's, as I say, man, Court of Owls, Long Halloween, those are kind of the template books, as far as, like, there are elements of those books. I'm not saying I'm copying those things, but there are elements of those books that I love very much. And one element is how they bring in the whole, the pantheon of the Bat family and the Rogues Gallery to make it all feel very, very much like Gotham. So I'll be doing that here too.
This is gonna be so awesome, man. I can't wait. And
Thanks, dude.
you talked earlier about using Batman and using create like making Damian sort of your own. You talked earlier too with the father-son dynamic, how that's important to you. How do you plan to make Damian Wayne, your version of Damian Wayne, stand out from previous creators who have written him in the past? If that makes sense.
There are elements that I've seen in other runs that I love and want to use. Like I love that Damian's an artist. I like that he draws. I like to see a little more personality from him. I like that he draws his own comics. I love that he loves animals the way that he does, especially when he can be so fucking rude all the time. Not all the time, but he's got that air of superiority, that he gets from his upbringing. Sometimes he can be very rude, but he is so kind and compassionate with animals in a way that I think is really great. So I want to see that show up. He doesn't really know how to be a son, though, how to be a good son. And Bruce doesn't know how to be a son or a dad. And I kind of want to explore that. I want to see both of them trying to connect, trying to love each other and to express love, and not really knowing how. Because both of them, like I try to communicate in the page how intense Bruce is. Like, what would it take? What kind of lifestyle would it take for you to become and maintain your place as somebody who stands toe to toe with gods, and they see you as an equal or even a superior? You're just a guy, but you're so awesome that superpower beings are afraid of you. What kind of intensity must that be like? What kind of attention to detail? What kind of attention to the passage of time, to nutrition, to training, to sleep, to meditation, to perception of the public versus your gear versus how you communicate. Like, what must that be like? And what must it be like to be like 13 and the kid of somebody like that? Somebody who holds themselves to that standard, and they try to hold you to that same standard too. Well, you're already at an age where you kind of, your dad kind of annoys you anyway at that age. And now your dad is the most awesome dude alive, but he's also super intense. I don't know. I kind of want to see the standard, like, teenage boy / dad relationship, but through the lens of this crazy superhero story. I don't know. There's just so much to do there, man. I want to see them trying to connect and failing. I want to see Damian getting frustrated with his kid Damian getting frustrated with his dad and Bruce getting frustrated with his kid, the way that, fathers and sons do, but about this larger than life stuff. I'm just so excited.
I can't wait. Because
it's gonna be really fun.
Part of what I liked a lot in the prelude right before, again, Superman hits Warworld, is a lot of the conversations that he had with John in the Golden Age, and obviously the prelude. It's like, okay, we're getting to see a little bit of how their relationship is like, but obviously John is a much older character versus where Damian is now. I think if you had written John back in right after Tomasi left in 2018, 2019. Could have seen a lot more of how does a 13-year-old not brat work, but now I don't know, I'm just like super excited to see like what you have in store for this just super interesting relationship between, like you said, like this, like Bruce doesn't know exactly how to be the best dad because he didn't get a full parental guidance on his life. He's mostly had Alfred, but Alfred wasn't, he's not not the full-on dad, right? Like, that you would expect. And obviously Damian is he's Damian Wayne. You're raised to be this perfect assassin.
And Alfred has always been this kind of a softening force on Bruce and Damian, like the one to kind of show affection in the way that Bruce and Damian can't. Like he would show, or at least show care in the way that they can't. So now that Alfred is gone, Bruce is really trying to kind of fill that void, but he doesn't know how. So it's, I don't know, man. It's just really a fascinating situation right now, especially with Alfred gone. It is just an amazing dynamic right now that is very complicated and sometimes kind of not cringy, but sometimes kind of that I think people will see a lot of themselves in. Like I want readers to be able to relate to these complicated, like whatever. Like a mom has half a day off from work and really wants to spend that time watching this show with her kid that they both love, but then the kid has there's a friend that wants to hang out instead. He'd much rather do that. So he goes, and the mother stays home and it's kind of feels sorry for herself and kind of cries about it. Because I wanted this time with my kid and now he's getting too old. Now he's too cool for it. Those little hurtful moments that we all kind of experience as parents and also as kids, where the other person accidentally hurts our feelings or through some kind of thoughtlessness, or I don't know, like what would those moments be like? We're like, okay, I'll give you a little spoiler here. Bruce pulls out, at one point, Bruce has a good reason to pull out his father's old journals, and he shows them to Damian, and Damian has an opportunity to kind of get to know his other grandfather a little bit, get to know, and he reads these journals and he finds that Thomas Wayne actually draws these little sketches in his journals, almost like a comic book. And so he has this way to kind of connect with his grandfather in a way. Up till now, he only respects warriors and generals and conquerors and emperors. He thinks about people like Batman and the Al Ghuls. Those are the people that he admires, not like doctors or social workers or normies. So he gets to know his normie grandfather a little bit better. And in those journals, Thomas talks about Bruce when he was a little kid. And he Damian tries to learn to be part of a family from these journals in a way that he can't get from Bruce. And so they have interactions based on those journals that are, sometimes really, touching, and other times kind of hurtful. So it's just going to be a very complicated dynamic that I'm very excited to show.
No, I mean, from everything that you're talking about with this seemingly like hopefully going to be as long as possible, this long-running epic of fighting whatever villains they're fighting, and also the incredible complications of the Wayne Al Ghul dynamic, like the whole balancing act between there. The more that you talk about, the more that I get excited for it.
Cool, man. Thank you.
It's but also too, like we're seeing it on the overlays here now, but you getting to work with Javier Fernandez, whose work I really loved on Sealy Nightwing, getting to see these full pages. How was it like working with him on this book and making these dreams realize?
Javi was just born to draw Batman. Like if you look at his old portfolio, his fan art or commissions, stuff like that of Batman is just, that stuff always just sings. And for him to actually be on the book now is, in my opinion, long overdue. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got to do this stuff with Nightwing, and it was amazing, right? I mean, he's so good. But to see him on a proper Batman book, especially the way that I envision it, like a foggy, rainy, noir kind of Gotham, he's just born for that shit. Like he's the perfect artist for it. I could not have asked for anyone better than Javi for this. So yeah, it's just a dream come true. And fortunately, actually, when we go to conventions, he is repped by the same guy as I am. Like we're both repped. Cool. We're both at Scott's Collectibles. It's his company out of the UK. So we're gonna be doing conventions together, and it'll be really easy for us to sign some of those books together. It's gonna be pretty cool. Okay. He's a really good guy, super nice dude. Weirdly talented. Just could not be more excited to work with him.
Because I'm looking at some of these spread pages now with the fighting and the shadows and that feel of you're in a Gotham that you feel unsafe, like you feel unsafe in, like, as a person, but Batman and Robin are going to be there to hopefully save you. Like, I'm feeling those good, like, uncomfy but good vibes right now. Like, just looking at this.
No, I'm glad to hear it.
But yeah, like I'm trying to think of what else that we could specifically talk about. I guess my other question would be, like, do you have a favorite Batman comic or favorite Damian Wayne comic off the top of your head? I know that there's a lot. But...
for Damian Wayne, for Damian, I hesitate to name a favorite just because a lot of these are written by my friends now, and I don't want to make hurt anyone's feelings, basically. But I did really love the arc in which Damian first appears. The
Batman
Batman
and
and
Son.
Son stuff. Yeah, it's so good. So I do still go back to that a lot. Damian's been through a lot since then. It was also really interesting to see him work alongside Dick Grayson's Batman as well. So that was always a really cool arc as well. Um, as far as Batman, some of my favorites for that would have to be, well, Court of Owls to me is like a masterclass on how to write a big two, arc. That was just so well done. But Batman in particular, love that book. Um, let's see, the Black Mirror
Black Mirror
before
with
that.
Dick Grayson and
Yeah, that was really great. Um, Long Halloween, of course. There's one called Lovers and Madmen that I like a lot. That's a lesser known one, but I like it a lot. The Doom That Came to Gotham
that's a good one too.
with Mignola, great one. There's a Paul Dini short.
The
Wait,
autobiographical one that he did with
no,
no, not
actually,
that one.
I know the one you mean. Actually, it might have been Bruce Timm. Sorry, it was like just a 6-page short in Batman Black and White. That's about it's done in that Batman animated series style. Man, I always draw a blank on who, like which one of those guys like wrote and drew it, or if it was both of them, or it might have been just Bruce Timm alone. I don't remember who did it, but there was a 6-page Two-Face story that appears in Batman Black and White that was so goddamn good. That story. Anytime I have to do a short story, that story is the bar. Like that's what we're trying to achieve. It's an unbelievable story. No, Batman's not even in it that much, but it just feels so Gotham to me. I just love it. Let's see. Those are, I guess I could take you over to my shelf.
Gotta take a sneak peek at the
Well, I
Mr.
can
Johnson
show me.
collection.
Yeah, here's my Batman stuff. Let's see. There's more downstairs. This is the stuff that's up in my office. So we got what we got here. We got the Frank Miller stuff. We have some of the classic ones from the very, very old days.
Gotham Central looks like.
Gotham Central is incredible. I should have mentioned that. The Dark Knight, The Master Race. I like that one. Arkham Asylum, of course. I should have thought of that too. Asylum also is a big influence on this story as well, the one I'm doing.
Can't wait for that.
There's an amazing one called there's Batman Superman Crossworld that Greg Pak did with Jay Lee.
Yeah, the New 52 stuff.
Yeah, the Black Glove was really cool. The Black Glove was like this really fun mystery that I liked a lot. Yeah, lots of good ones to choose from.
Absolutely, and if you guys should absolutely head to your local comic shop, as we still have a couple of days before FOC. Get Batman and Robin number 14 pre-ordered. Is going to rock your guys' mind with everything that Phillip Kennedy Johnson just talked about. The more that I listen to him, the more that I want to see the first issue of this now. So head over there.
Dude. Yeah, it's gonna be dope. Yeah. Our new villain that we created, Memento, man, he's like a cross between Aleister Crowley and Jack the Ripper, kind of. He gives Gotham this really awesome, like, I don't know, you just don't feel safe in Gotham, Mm-hmm. And it's what can I say about Memento without spoiling everything? I don't want people to know who he is, but he comes from Batman's past, and there's this big question about there's various characters who he might be, and I don't know. He just I've always loved the idea of like Batman against Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to see a story like that, but introduce these kind of supernatural elements. Like, is he actually just a man, or is he something more than that? I want there to be this kind of open question about whether Batman is up against something supernatural or not. That was one of the big influences of Doom, the Doom that came to Gotham. Just that question about like, what am I really facing here? I just love that creepy vibe that you might be facing something, truly old and terrifying, and not just another guy in a mask.
which just makes this all the more opt-in and interesting. And I hope and pray that you get on, like, you write this book next 3, 4, 5 years, because having a definitive voice for Damian, and hopefully someday me saying, man, guys, Phillip Kennedy Johnson's run is my favorite run of Damian's, definitive one. You guys got it. I mean, just the thought of that.
Like, I hope so. Yeah. That's a cool thought. That would be really fun. I love that character, and knowing that you love him like you do, I really want to try to make this one sing.
Oh, so, awesome. And I hopefully all of my viewers and anyone who's also watching this will feel the same way too. And also feel the same way about some of your older works. I feel like because we'd be talking about Batman and Robin so much for at least the first half of the portion of this interview, we just didn't get a chance to talk about some of the other books that you've done. And one that particularly stuck out to me, and rereading it for the last 2-3 days, was your Action Comics run that you've gotten to do with Daniel Sampere, Miguel Mendoza, Riccardo Federici. You probably have my favorite written my favorite Superman run in the last 10 years. One thing I always, tell people, like, the mark of someone who, knows has a dedication to their craft is being able to put characters in situations where they're forced to they have to adapt to that situation, and they also still manage to write that character perfectly in those situations. And you nailed, in my opinion, Clark's voice down to a T, while also putting him in dangerous spots that I never knew that I would be gripped by. But every single time I opened up one of those issues, it was like, I cannot put this down. Like, I need to read more. So
thanks, dude.
Of course. So how did you get on Action Comics? How did that all pan and process out?
Man, I got really fortunate. I did a DC Black Label book called The Last God, Book 1 of the Fellspyre Chronicles. And it's this epic fantasy horror story that I did there. It's a 12-issue series. We ended up doing a spin-off issue and a D&D source book with it too. I just did the reason we got the source book and all the back matter in every issue is because I just did an unthinkable amount of world building for that book. And I put in so much of that, in fact, that when DC was working on their 5G thing, you know about 5G?
Yes. I did read your Future State Superman related issues.
Oh, cool. Good. Yeah. At some point they were gonna, for those who don't know listening, there was this possibility that we were going to be doing this crazy, like, fixed timeline thing with DC where, like, Wonder Woman appears at a specific year in time, and this is when this happens, and then Superman appears in this year, and Batman appears this. Like, if you see Batman at age 30, that means it is 1984 or whatever. And just completely changed. As everyone knows, like, Superman's been a young man since the 30s, and we just kind of don't talk about it. He's just always kind of been there. They were going to change all that, and it was a super bold move that ended up not happening, but it was kind of underway. We were already sort of working on it. And actually, I was working on a Damian Wayne story that was going to take place like later. It was going to take place like when he was an adult. But another one of the things that they wanted me to work on was they talked to me about kind of show running their cosmic line, because, like, they were like, hey, we got this guy that puts in an insane amount of work and, like, world building and backstory. And they wanted that kind of thing to flesh out their cosmic stuff. And we had this big thing that we wanted to do that involved Warworld and Superman a lot. So that when that all kind of went away, we were figuring out what we were going to do instead. They were like, well, would you, like, let's just have you do some of that on Superman and Action Comics. So I did Superman and Action Comics together for a little bit, knowing that John Kent was about to be the Superman of Earth. So I did the Superman series just to tee up my friend Tom Taylor to take over the Superman Son of Kal-El book that followed John Kent. And then Action Comics would be the Clark book that was going to be happening largely off-planet. So that set me up to do my Warworld Saga story. And so I wrote Action Comics. I wrote Superman for
4 issues.
like
Yeah.
4 or 5 issues, yeah. And then I did Action Comics for about 3 years. So yeah,
Some
worked
of
out
my
nice.
favorite, yeah, some of my favorite Superman stuff like ever in those 3 years.
Oh, thank you, man. It's a huge honor to get to do it. I mean, writing Superman just carries a kind of weight that um, that I don't feel like there's like a responsibility to it that I don't feel on any other book. I mean, it's just different. Not to say, I mean, I'm always trying to honor the chance that the publisher took on me to write any kind of project. Like writing Incredible Hulk is also a great honor. Writing Batman obviously is a great honor. But when you're writing Superman, you're making a statement about the best of humanity, like what we should all aspire to be. It's like a philosophical statement about humanity, that carries a weight that no other book carries, in my view. And so I try to have these like touchstone elements that I would never stray from. And like one of them is like just the remembering the kind of mission statement. A lot of people got real pissed off when the Truth, Justice, and the American Way thing kind of went away, when they took the American Way off of there.
Yeah.
The real mission statement of Superman, as expressed in Action Comics #1, is champion of the oppressed. That's what he is, really.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the standard bearer of my whole run. Like, if he is the champion of the oppressed, who's the villain of the story, and how is he the opposite of that thing? So that's where I wanted to make Mongol different from, sometimes Mongol is kind of put in the same category as like Thanos or Darkseid, or just the big burly aliens. And people kind of mistake one for the other, and they look kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make Mongol different? And the answer was to make him an intergalactic slaver, like this, the opposite of the champion of the oppressed, So anyway, championing the oppressed is one big thing. The other thing was the only reason the powers should be there is to illustrate how incorruptible he is. He can't just get out there and kick somebody's ass and look awesome doing it. He needs to show how he's different. It can't just be a fight. It can't be a fist fight. So that's how we get moments like, when the slaves are rising up on Warworld, and he's fighting Mongol, and everyone else is fighting too. We're also seeing images of these kids, and Mongol says something like, what does he say? Mongol says something to him like, you debase yourself with weaker beings, or something like that, or lesser beings. And he says like, lesser, like, you don't understand a damn thing. Like, they're more than us. Like, these people never had, heat vision or power gems or the strength of gods. They're down in the mud, they get beat up, they get cut, they get killed, and they're just as brave as if none of that was true. Like, can you really not see what I see in them? It's not about him, it's not about Mongols, it's about them. So while he's fighting, we're seeing those people. Or like later on Earth, when he goes Super Saiyan and makes this big construct with his biokinetic aura and obliterates Metallo. As soon as he does that, he like literally hands him his pieces to put himself to put Metallo back together so that he can help him go save his sister. It's not enough to just beat him down. As soon as he's prevented Metallo from murdering Superman's children, he is like, okay, now I'll help you. So that's what separates Superman from, not just from other heroes in other books, but also from us. That would be hard for you and I to do. Like if somebody's actually trying to murder our family and we fight to defend them, as anyone would, and then after we've defended our family and they're safe, then we help that person. That's what sets Superman apart from the rest of us, and that's what we should aspire to be. So anyway, that was kind of my philosophy on Superman. I just had to keep those things in mind, at the forefront of my mind, every time I'm writing Superman. I wanted to have those moments in the book where he shows us the way. He shows us how to be more than we are, so that when they put the book away, when the reader puts that book away, they feel like $1 million, and they feel they want to be what that is. They hear John Williams' music in their mind, and they want to go out and just, they want to go out and just be great and make the world better. That was always kind of the point.
And I believe he absolutely did with what we saw in, you know, those 20 or so issues that he gets transported off, and it's just so different than what I'm used to seeing in a Superman book. But you nailed it. You know, I think you nailed it well to the point of, well, pretty much everything you said, and like, again, keeping me and like a lot of other people invested. I don't know if you saw, but there is an Omnibus, a big old hardcover collection of your book coming out. Did DC approach you, or how did that all?
They did. Yeah, no, they wanted to, man. It's super cool. I shouldn't talk about too much, but yeah, they said an Omnibus Volume 1 is coming out, and I worked with the editor about what's going to be in there, and oh man, I'm so honored. So yeah, I'm hugely honored to have an Omnibus coming out, and I can't wait for people to see it, and for Volume 2.
Oh man, because I collect omnibuses. I have like most recent one, I have the Justice League Dark omnibus.
Nice.
For Rebirth right here. Yeah, and it's all like, I would just love to have your Superman run like on the shelf, like being able to get there and all that stuff, man. No, it's gonna be awesome.
Oh, thank you, man. It's coming.
For sure. And obviously you wrote the Superman stuff that came right after Warworld with Dawn of DC, where you did get to write bits of the Superman family with the backups by different creators.
Yeah.
Like Gene Luen Yang, and who's one of my favorites, and Dan Jurgens, and a lot of those people. Was there any particular character on the Superman family that you had more, I guess, more fun than you anticipated when you started writing those scripts? If you had to choose,
man, from the Super family, writing Connor's real fun. Writing the twins is fun. I mean, that's cheating because it's like I invented those guys. Writing the twins is really fun. Writing Connor is, maybe I keep coming back to Connor, man. He's really fun. Writing Supergirl, I have a take on Supergirl that not everyone shares. To me, Supergirl she should always kind of be the smartest person in the room. Like, she's the most Kryptonian of any of those guys. Like, she was the one who actually lived there and had Kryptonian family and friends and like people that she knew and remembered, and lost all of that. Like, her whole world is gone. I mean, Superman lost his whole world, but he was a baby. Supergirl lost it when she was like a kid, like not even that young of a kid. So I don't know. That's to me, she is kind of like the last bastion of Kryptonian culture, in my opinion. And so Superman, even though she's younger right now, like biologically, she looks younger and smaller, Superman defers to her like a matriarch of the family, or should, in my opinion. So I always try to write her that way. So even, I mean, it wasn't to say that it was like fun, like more fun than others is not exactly true, but it felt important, kind of like that view of her is the one that I believe to be the right one, and I try to always write her that way. So that's probably writing Supergirl is maybe the most rewarding, I guess, of the super family to write. But writing Connor is real fun, man. I like that he's just a little more scrappy than some of the other ones. He's just
he is.
He just has a little more screw you in it than the other ones.
Gung ho and all that versus the others where they might be more reserved.
He's just really fun. Writing him and Con Kennan have the kind of bromance was really fun, where, you know, Con Kennan, because Kennan is kind of, he's also a little arrogant and just kind of like a dare you kind of, like there's like a macho kind of thing in him as well. Not macho, just like an arrogance kind of.
Right.
And he and Connor just kind of feed off each other in that way. And it was fun to watch Connor kind of, like, Connor decides to teach Kennan English through like action movies and video games, and that was really fun to see that relationship develop. They become like bros, kind of. That was just really fun. So yeah, I'd say that. I think the Connor Kennan relationship was really, really fun to write and watch it slowly develop.
Oh, that more than suffices. And I mean, even like, you know, after all that, all the introductions with the Dawn of DC and you getting obviously to write the Superman family, you also got to write John Stewart. I love the Green Lanterns. They are one of my favorite franchises in comics. I grew up in the 2000s with Jeff Johns and Peter J. Tomasi writing those Green Lantern books. And getting to see your take on John Stewart, well, first on a solo, like, thank you for getting us a John Stewart book. Never would have thought, but, like, you know, I love that he's there. How much fun did you have writing him and also incorporating that with other Dawn of DC books like Steelworks?
Oh, it's a huge honor. Yeah, it was really fun to get to bring him back to Metropolis and kind of tie it all together. Like, whenever I'm writing more than one book at one place, I always try to tie it together in some way if I can, not just to other creators' work, but also to other stories that I've done there. Yeah, they approached me about writing the John book, and I was excited to give it a swing. In part because I actually grew up with Hal as Green Lantern.
Me too.
And the books that I had with John in that role were quite old, like, you know, Neil Adams, Daniel O'Neill days, and I remember him as like the architect, but now everyone that I know mostly knows about him as they see him as like the ex-Marine. He's kind of got that like military lingo, like as imagined by civilians, kind of like it's kind of how he talks. And I was like, it just seemed a little thin. I don't know. It wasn't good enough for me. So I got to kind of, you know, one of my mission statements for that book was to bring together all the disparate elements of what makes John who he is and bring them together into one character, so that we do see the Marine in him, but also the architect, also the son of the civil rights leader, also the older brother of the sister who died. Like, there's a lot of parts to him that make him much more complex than we typically see him on the page. I don't know. He's got all the skills and talents that you would ever want in a Green Lantern in a way that the other Green Lanterns typically don't. Usually when the Ring chooses somebody, we have to kind of see over the course of an arc or two, we have to find out what the Ring was thinking. Like, so many of the other Lanterns are kind of like dark horse picks, like Hal, Jessica Cruz for sure, Simon Boz. Kyle Rayner was just a guy in an alleyway.
Right.
Like, it didn't make sense. It was like, I think Ganthan said something like, I suppose you'll have to do, or something like that. He just like picked some rando, and they turn out to be amazing. But John Stewart was always just the obvious choice, like the devastating warrior, the great tactician, the brilliant engineer and architect. You know, he has all the pieces, you know. So it was really fun to show that, but also show what he's afraid of, and show how his sense of duty kind of gets splintered between her and his family, you know, his mother who's dying. So I don't know, there's a lot to it, but it was really fun and rewarding, and it was an honor to get to do it. Right. There's a lot of responsibility to that book too. I talk about responsibility for the Superman books. John is important too, to a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of veterans that need us to get it right, but especially the Black community, they need a John book to be awesome. And I just knew when I took that book, I was like, I cannot let these people down. I got to pay attention to all these little pieces to make sure we don't accidentally do something really stupid that really disappoints people. So I went to great pains to make sure that book, you know, sang. No,
and I think it did, and obviously now you're wrapping it up with Civil Corps. My understanding, if I may ask, because I talked with Jeremy Adams a couple of days ago, and he said that it was a fun trip to sort of write that with you. That is where this whole John thing ends, and he's sort of being pushed on to the next. If I'm getting that right, or how does that work? Sort of, yeah. I don't want to spoil too much. The book, my part in John's story for now is done. We had 12 issues with War Journal. There are these 3 short stories before that in the back pages of Green Lantern. There's the epilogue chapter that just happened in the back pages of Green Lantern 15, I think. Yep. And now Civil Corps, and then it kind of all wraps up and becomes one story again in the pages of Green Lantern. So that's where my part in this ends for now. And I do have something else to say about it, kind of, but I can't yet. There's another book at some point that is not announced yet that will also incorporate elements of it. Awesome. Get some hype up for the viewers all back home. But also in this fact, I mean, you talked earlier about Last God, which I also got a chance to read through. And so many people, I worked at a comic shop back in 2021, 2022, and all they did was, man, like, Dom, Phillip Kennedy Johnson's like one of my favorite writers. Like, you got to read The Last God when you get a chance. I'm like, I'll push it down I put it down the road. But I read it this week, and I was just fascinated by the mythology, like everything. And if I'm not mistaken, you played a lot of. Did you play a lot of D&D when you grew up?
Not exactly. I grew up kind of out in the sticks. Did not have a lot of. I didn't really have a crew in the place where I was. I was like one of those kids from Stranger Things, but in the Iowa farmland by myself. So I didn't really have a crew to play D&D with, like, in person the way people do. I did spend my own money on a Dragonlance like D&D set. Back in the day of like AD&D, like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was kind of like the newest version of that before all the editions that came out after that. But I didn't really have a crew to play with, so I would use it kind of as a storytelling vehicle. Like I had all the character cards, and I had all the information for the races and the regions and all the stuff that I needed to DM a game. But it was just me, so I would use it to kind of just basically tell my own stories. I know that must sound really pathetic and sad to gamers out there, but it's what I had. So yeah, I was definitely an enthusiast, and I had the books. I had like the manuals and everything. I loved all that shit. I read all the the Dragonlance books, and I just made up a lot of my own stuff in the world of Dragonlance and other D&D things, but also just kind of my own stories. So I didn't get to actually game in that way back then.
I see. And
even now, that has kind of become. I still love the genre and that kind of material, but I never quite. I get probably because of the way that stuff was presented to me when I was a kid. I still have not really had the experience of playing with a group. Like rather than playing D&D with friends or even Baldur's Gate 3, I'm playing like Elden Ring, where it's like a kind of a one-man show. This is sort of how I've experienced those things. But we did bring in Dan Telfer, a host of a prominent D&D podcast, to help us write the mechanics. When we did the D&D source book, we made the whole thing playable with 5th edition, with this single issue called Tales from the Book of Ages. And I wrote all the running text in that, all the lore, all the stuff about there's a big thing in there about magic weapons and items, about different regions, about like the creation myths and what else? Monsters. There are a lot of monsters in there that appear in the book, but also a lot that don't. Because there are different creatures that I created that we didn't have an organic way to bring them into the story, so we just left them out. But then I got to use all that in the source book. So I wrote all that stuff. But as far as, the mechanics, like, the effect the different monsters have when they attack and which die you use or which dice you use for those attacks, those kind of things, Dan Telfer wrote a lot of that stuff, right? The actual mechanics. But man, it was really fun, rewarding to write.
No, absolutely. Do you think we get to see some more of it someday?
We'll get it done. Yeah, I really want to. Ricardo wants to as well. They're kind of keeping both of us hopping on, on their other properties. Like, we're doing Batman, Superman, and the other big stuff.
Right.
So they, DC makes more money on that. They want to create our own epic fantasy thing. But we'll get it done. We'll come back around to it for sure. I know if they ever assign me exclusive, that'll be my first stipulation. Like, give me more Last God. But also, Ariana Torturo, the editor there, is also a massive fan of D&D. Like, Ariana is just like driven by D&D. Whenever she's not doing comics, she's doing that. At least that's how it was back when we were doing Last God. Ariana's idea to even pitch the thing. So we're gonna find a way to get more done for sure. I've been a little bit low on bandwidth lately, but I must do more Last God, and I know Ricardo feels the same way.
I think we a lot of 'cause a lot of my friends, including myself, have been asking like, if Last God was ever gonna come back. But it's great to hear that it's like you got a lot more ideas in. I know that Riccardo Federici was a little busy on Detective Comics with Ron V for some of those
Yeah,
issues. So you guys have been hopping
yeah, for
around
sure.
over DC a lot.
Yeah, it's been a
in
lot.
those moments. Real quick, a couple of last questions, and I think that'll wrap up this interview. You mentioned earlier to me you have a cool Batman, Superman statue in the back there, and you said that
Oh
you
yeah.
also have some other weird stories you'd like to quickly tell about.
Oh well, just I mean, no, it's the way that when I got that. Yeah, it's not that big of a story, but when I first was in, let's see, when was it? So when I first walked into Third Eye Comics, my that was like my first comic shop that I'd been to in Maryland. Like when I started, trying to figure out what comics were like and how to write them and how to help my brother start his art career. Um, it was a really small store, but they kept because it's their love of the game and their knowledge of the medium and everything. They saw a lot of success and they upgraded. Now they're in their fourth location in Annapolis, where the store is, and they also have all these other stores as well. They're doing amazingly well. I think maybe their second location, they started bringing in a lot of like a lot more figurines and statues. And I saw that one which is obviously from Dark Knight Returns. So there it is. And I just thought it was super dope. Like there's the bat tank thing underneath. There's a Carrie Kelly in there with their little
That's so cool.
slingshot pointed out the hole. I just thought it was amazing. And it was kind of expensive though. And I never bought a statue before. I was like, I don't know if it's worth that to me. At the time I was a little shorter on cash, and I was like, man, I knew that if whenever they bring in a creator to do a signing, they give them 40% off stuff in the store that day. And I was already trying to figure out how to write comic books, and I was like, someday I'm going to do a signing at Third Eye, and I'm going to buy that fucking thing. And that's what happened. So eventually I did my first printed book, which was Last Sons of America at Boom Studios. And I did a signing at Third Eye Comics because Steve and I were friends. Steve and Trish, the owners, and I had become very tight by then because I was like a devoted customer, since the very beginning. And we did a signing and went well. And I bought a bunch of books and that statue. So yeah, that's the only statue I've ever bought. I've got other things that that come with special edition games. Like here, I've got Mjolnir that came with God of War Ragnarok. What else do I have here? I've got this is not the same kind of thing, but this is actually a sculpture that was made by a friend of mine, sort of like a friend of my dad's,
nice.
really. And this thing, yeah, it's pretty cool. So it was in my dad's office growing up, and now it's mine. So I don't have a whole lot of stuff like that, but I do have that. So anyway, but yeah, that's I really like that piece.
That is so awesome. But I believe that concludes us for this interview. And as much as I would love to talk about more with Phillip Kennedy Johnson, he is a very incredibly busy person. But what you can do to help him out, pick up Batman and Robin number 14 when it drops at your comic shop in October. And of course, issue 15 and onwards, November and on. Obviously, Incredible Hulk and other titles like that. Phillip, where can people find you if you have social media?
Yeah, well, I have a website too you can go to. It's phillipkennedyjohnson.com. You're welcome to go there. I try to keep it updated with all the books I have out. I'm also on Facebook under my full name. I'm on Twitter and all the Twitter descendants. Let's see, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads under Phillip K, like at Phillip K Johnson, 2 L's than Phillip. Instagram under the same handle, and I think that's it. So yeah. I try to be, I'm usually working. I don't post as much as would be advisable, but I do my best. I do post every day or two at least. So I try to keep people updated on what books are coming out. But the website's also a good place to stop. So please hit me up, say hello.
Oh, for sure. And that wraps it up for this interview. Phillip, you are absolutely welcome to come back to my channel anytime if you have more comics that you'd like to talk about. I am, of course, Dom of X, comicreleases.com assistant editor. Please go ahead. If you guys want to see more Phillip or want to see more content in general, please like and subscribe and hit on that notification bell so you know when I upload all of these things. That's it. I'm Dom of X, you be you. Take care and dominate the day wherever you are.